Tonight, Canada begins the rebuilding of its military.
Alberta and Ontario push a new pipeline vision that could reshape the country's energy future.
And at the FIFA World Cup, questions are growing over politics, money, and whether the rules apply equally to everyone. From Montreal, episode 91 of Night Talk Canada starts now. I'm Gary MacDonald.
And as usual, just down the street from Gary, I'm Eddie Tekalik. Tonight isn't just about submarines, pipelines, or soccer.
No, it's about influence, accountability, and whether Canada is finally starting to chart its own course. Let's get started.
The sovereignty of our country, bounded by 3 oceans and the world's longest coastline, depends on our maritime capabilities, and I want to salute the women and men of Canada's Navy. First, we need to be aware of what's in, what's over, and what's under our vast territory. And that's why we're investing in a new fleet of P-8 Poseidon patrol aircraft. That's why we're investing in Arctic over-the-horizon radar. Secondly, we obviously need to be able to defend those waters, which is why we're building 15 River-class destroyers and an entirely new fleet of polar icebreakers and Arctic patrol vessels. And it's why we're here today, to announce an ambitious investment in new best-in-class submarines. Today, as part of our commitments to defend Canada and to support our allies, I'm pleased to announce that Canada has selected TKMS as the preferred supplier for Canada's patrol submarine project. But there's more to come. We will now enter into negotiations to procure up to 12 submarines. What I can confirm today is that we have already provisioned for the costs of purchasing these submarines in our fiscal framework. It's already in the budget. And I can confirm that this procurement will be the largest in Canadian history, and that by design, and Doug Guzman just alluded to this very lightly, by design, this process will have far and away the greatest economic impact of any defense investment right across Canada.
Canada has finally chosen its next submarine. Now, it's the biggest naval decision in decades, and it says a great deal about where Canada believes future threats are coming from. And what do we mean by that? Well, Canada has selected the German-Norwegian submarine design to replace the aging, well, should we say the antiquated, Victoria-class fleet. And the decision aligns closely with NATO priorities while strengthening Canada's Arctic presence. It represents far more than a procurement announcement. It signals a major shift in Canada's defense posture. And let's just bring up a couple of things here so we can have a look at this in a little more detail. First off, this isn't just a $24 billion purchase. It actually will work out to $100 billion over time, Canada's largest military procurement ever. Now, NATO and the Arctic beat faster delivery time designed specifically for Arctic and under ice conditions. And Canada is not just buying a strategic partnership here. No, it's not just submarines leading to expanded defense industrial cooperation. So there's a whole host of things going on here, Eddie, with this particular purchase and decision. And as we said, it's the largest when you factor it all in over the years, including maintenance, building the bases and the infrastructure to service them and everything else. It will turn out to be, at this stage anyway, Canada's largest military procurement ever. Now,
Yeah.
the South Koreans were in the bidding as well, and it came down to the South Koreans in this consortium between Germany and Norway. So they were, both of them offering all kinds of industrial benefits, financial benefits to Canada. And yes, the South Koreans could deliver the submarines sooner. But what this gives us and NATO, because we are becoming more closely aligned with Europe and all of our European partners, it gives us greater interoperability. And also, these subs are designed for Arctic waters and under ice operations. So they fit in a lot better. And I remember, I think it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, where the consortium came back and said, look, we can deliver the first sub because they're still kind of in the finalizing of the planning and procurement, as far as supplies are concerned, stages. But they were saying that they could deliver the first sub no later than 2036. Now, that's 10 years down the road, and it may come in a little bit sooner than that anyway, because I remember during the frigate program, there is still, from that gleam in your eye, it's like a pregnancy. From that gleam in your eye until 9 months later, there's a lot of things that happen. And 9 months goes by pretty quickly. And 10 years or sooner will go by just as quickly. And but we're, with our European allies, we're all going to be on the same page pretty much as far as this sort of thing is concerned. And why are we concerned about the Arctic? Well, let's put it this way. Global warming is also hitting the Arctic. And the ice pack is starting to melt a bit, which means the Northwest Passage shipping lane is becoming more accessible without icebreakers or having ships jammed in the ice until summer.
For a longer season, yeah.
Yes, and that opens up our waters to the Russians and the Chinese, both of which are very much interested in our Arctic. And why? Well, of course, gives them a more direct access to some of our critical minerals. And also, if they want to come rolling in on down through and try and take us over, and then go knocking on the doorstep of the U.S., there they are. So we need to get serious, and the Carney government, and Carney in particular, seems to be really, really very serious about protecting our Arctic sovereignty. And he makes no bones about it. It's the Russians and the Chinese we have to worry about. And also, I've read a couple of different articles which have suggested that the Russians have been busy building new forward bases on their side.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's going to protect their sovereignty as well. However, it's all, we need to look upon that not only as them protecting their sovereignty, but them also using that as a stepping stone to launch some kind of an attack on us. I don't have a problem with it. There will be financial gains across the country as we work with the consortium to develop the submarines. And as I say, hopefully, once things really get rolling, I hope we can get them in the water sooner. And I recall back during... Go ahead.
No, well, I was just going to comment, Gary. It's something you and I discuss very often over our coffees during the course of Night Talk Canada, and prior to that, where both you and I were concerned about Canadian sovereignty, and both of us were very critical of the previous governments of Canada not doing very much for our military forces here, and our commitments to NATO and for defending ourselves. We're going back to the turbulent Trudeau governments, the Liberal governments, back into the conservative Harper government. So both our political parties and leaders of those political parties, while they were in charge, did very little for our country and our sovereignty. So you know what? You and I were hoping that one of the things that Mr. Carney would do, or whoever the prime minister was before the elections, really took an aggressive look at what we needed to do to bolster up our military defenses. To tell you quite honestly, I think Mr. Carney is in overdrive, and he used that as part of his election platform in terms of bolstering up our military capabilities. And you know what? He's done so quite frankly in leaps and bounds. If you look at the last 15 to 16 years of the lack of support that our federal government gave to our military. You look at the over-horizon technology that we're working with the Australians in deploying up north. Not a U.S. solution, but an Australian solution, which we're going to be deploying. You look at the drive by Prime Minister Carney to bolster his relationship with the European Union and NATO for that fact, while we have a present ally called the United States, or supposed ally called the United States, knocking on the door and saying they want to pull out of this thing. So, Canada is cozying up to a group of countries that are like-minded and are looking at defending its sovereignty from the two aforementioned, the Russians and the Chinese, and who knows, maybe the Americans later on in time. But let's just stick with those two, and aggressively pushing that. The discussions of the Saab Gripen, as opposed to the F-35, being thrown on the table for discussions. The acquiring of this submarine technology. There's just so much, and let's not forget about the aerial surveillance systems that are going to be developed jointly between Saab and Bombardier. Another agreement with the European country. So, you know what? If you look at the writing on the wall and on the desk, it seems very, very, very symbolic and likely that we are trying to wean ourselves away from American dependency. This is just one way of doing it. Not cut ourselves off entirely, because they are still neighbors to the south. We're still allies, defending this particular part of space in the world. We're still going to be working with them, but not 100% dependency with them, which is I think part of the mantra and part of the platform that the Liberal government, or the Carney government, has put on the table since day one. And I'm kind of feeling a little patriotic today, Gary, because of this decision, because whether they went with the Tyson Krupp or they went with Hanwha Ocean from Korea, either way, a decision was made, Gary. Line drawn in the sand, we've just crossed it, and now we're going to move forward with it, as opposed to just committee after subcommittee, and then you have the opposition critiques, and then you have the discussions, and 50 years go by and nothing happens. Stuff is happening, Gary, and I'm as a Canadian citizen, I'm very pleased that things are actually happening, and he's going to move forward with this. Damn the pundits. You know what? Good on Canada. Good on Carney. Good for NATO, and good for our alliance and our association with other European powerhouses to build both our economies, German economy, the Norwegian economy, and most importantly, the Canadian economy through this joint venture. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Now, I just popped a question in a few minutes ago into the chat, and it is, does buying submarines make Canada more secure or simply satisfy NATO and ultimately U.S. expectations? And we already have a comment in there, which is up on the screen. And I like the question that they raise. Should we start a nuclear program?
Whoa.
That's really opening a can of worms. And good for you to bring that up, because
we never
I remember...
talked about that, Gary, have we? That's a nice one. Nice question.
Yeah. And I remember, back through the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s, that was the question. Why are we not investing more in, nuclear capability? And the whole thing was that at that time, Canada was a respected peacemaker in the world, and that it was looked upon that possessing nukes would detract from that, and I guess in a roundabout way detract from our ability and credibility as a peacekeeper. Because if you may remember, Eddie, that there were a number of global conflicts, smaller ones, that popped up all over the place, and one of them that sticks out in my mind was in Cyprus. And
yes.
Canada was always the first, or among the first nations called upon by the United Nations, when the United Nations actually had some kind of clout, to form a peacekeeping unit and go in and try and settle things down. So we, and Lester B. Pearson, one of our former prime ministers,
Right.
was known basically as a prime minister of peace, and if I remember correctly, he was honored for his positions
Nobel.
as far as our peacekeeping, and jumping in on, being the first to jump in on peacekeeping issues. So
Didn't he win the
there you
Nobel
have
for
it.
that? I think he did, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
I believe you're right.
Well, we have Cyprus, Gary, and don't forget the Arab-Israeli war. I mean, Canadian
Yes.
flags, along with the UN flag, were deployed in between some horrendous armies, huge armies. So, yeah, Canada has always been known as being first in terms of peacekeeping efforts under the United Nations flag. And yeah, I guess so. We've been looked upon as peacekeepers. But Gary, let's think about this. I think Canada can still be considered peacekeepers, even though we don't have the ultimate in weapons technology being nuclear weapons. And Lockheed's, that's a great question. I actually never pondered that in a discussion myself. Should we have nuclear weapons? My attitude has always been, well, we got the United States to protect us. We're allies. And I think, as Carney said over in Davos, you know what? We got to look at absolutely everything, because everything's been overturned on the table because of things we talked about religiously over many episodes. We just can't depend on the states and the United States anymore, and I think the world has seen that too. Again, Gary,
Look at what we witnessed.
Should we develop nuclear weapons? Sorry about that, Gary. Sorry. Should we develop nuclear weapons? Whether we can or not, okay, is another question to be asked. Do we have the technical know-how in developing something like that? Absolutely freaking yes. We've been at the forefront of high-end technological developments all the time, Gary. From the Aerojet to our CANDU reactors, our capability and knowledge of nuclear sciences is right up there with most powerhouses on the planet. So surely, if our government decides that we should stock ourselves and protect ourselves with nuclear weapons, we certainly have the capability. Now, whether other countries, and country left unmentioned, would allow us to pursue such a program is a whole different story. But yeah, should we have one? I don't know. Can we build them? Absolutely. Will we be allowed to build them? We'll see what happens. Great question.
Well, it is, and now Deborah in the chat brings up the point about we are bound to NATO obligations, and we're in danger from the north, but even more recently from the south. And more Canadians are beginning to feel that way, that in fact we can no longer trust our neighbors to the south, or should I say maybe the administration and its supporters to the south. We can no longer trust them. And all you have to do is just go back over the last 2 or 3 days and watch what the President of the United States, when he was awake, by the way, not nodding off during meetings, what he was saying about any and all of the allies in attendance.
Yeah.
He dissed pretty much everyone. Really? And he's still smarting about nobody helping in the war with Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as it was explained, and even our own prime minister said to him, NATO is defensive only.
It's a defensive entity, correct?
Yes. Defensive, not offensive. You started the war. You started the war without any real significant planning, no kind of exit plan or exit plans to get out of it. And what you're trying to do, and you can smell this one a mile away, is you're looking for somebody or some people or countries to come in and kind of take it over while you very quietly, well, you really don't do anything quietly, but while you slither away like a snake
Mm-hmm.
and wash your hands of it. You know what, big boy? You got yourself into this. Get yourself out of it.
Agreed.
And can you imagine if the shoes had been reversed here and that was Joe Biden or even Barack Obama sitting in a NATO meeting, not on one occasion, but on 2 occasions, 2 days, falling asleep
Yeah.
during the meetings, the heavy-duty stuff. And then he goes off on Spain, dumps all over Spain,
Yeah.
dumps all
Quite
over the rest of the
aggressively.
allies for not, supporting them and spending enough. And then the awkward handshake with the Prime Minister of Italy. A week ago, 2 weeks ago, he was talking about getting a restraining order against her. What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because she wanted pictures of him, and oh my God.
And did she ever give, like he tried to put on this phony front shaking her hand for the official picture. And I watched that video clip at least 3 times. And man, oh man, he is stunned if he did not feel the heat and the daggers coming from those eyes when she looked at him. Whoa!
Yeah.
It was like watching a missile launch against him. But anyway, he's too thick to even realize, apparently, because he just toddles along. Anyway, that's him, and I don't want to talk any more about him because it's
Well, the
let's
point
not
being is that
waste.
we can't trust. The point being we can't trust that administration, whereby we have to get out of our comfort zone as Canadians and look at other ways where we can A, protect ourselves, and B, continue our membership in a protected alliance with Europe and NATO, without having to depend on that administration. Like you said, clearly, we just can't depend on them because you'll have a decision made one day, and the next day you have a bowel movement and something else happens, right?
Yeah. And apparently,
Oh, that's great.
apparently, we're being called out on even mentioning the guy to the south.
Yeah.
But given how disruptive in a lot of ways he was to this very important NATO session, and credit to all of the other leaders there, they managed to get some business done
Yeah.
despite the antics of his nibs. So that's a good thing. Now, what I'd like to do, Eddie, is just bring up. Let's talk about Canada and our defense spending right now, because it is amazing. Here, and there was a deal announced at the meeting today, another one, and I don't have the details on it in front of me, unfortunately. But as of earlier this afternoon, before the Prime Minister announced this other deal. This is what we have. The subs, that's a $24 billion acquisition for 12 subs, but the overall lifetime repairs, equipment, updates,
Maintenance,
bases,
whatever,
infrastructure, $100 billion. River-class destroyers, new naval surface vessels, $22 billion. And I'm sure that they will start replacing the aging, and it's hard to believe that the frigates are, reaching that stage in their life, because I remember covering the commissioning of the first frigate when it was launched.
And how the Americans' jaws dropped in awe in terms of
Yes.
its capabilities in those days.
Exactly. And yes,
And
there
I
were
think our submarines are
delays.
going to be the same thing. Our subs are going to be the same thing, Gary. Jaw
Oh,
dropping.
for sure. For sure. And as I say, there were delays and everything with that particular program and some overruns. But it was all put into perspective by one marine engineer that was brought in from Scotland. And he said, you have to remember, Canada has not built a naval ship since during the Second World War. And this was in the 90s, the early 90s. And he said, this is like starting out and designing the shuttle.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there will be some setbacks and there will be some things, but, and the dry dock in St. John and the assembly building, where they put together sections of the ship inside and then moved them outside and joined them together like a Lego piece, was designed as well because at that time we were talking about replacing the subs. And that never materialized, but they designed that building so they could do it. They could build them and launch them and then bring them in and bring them inside when they needed a refit or repairs and repair them inside and then put them back out. That's all gone now. Just gone. Anyway, that was that. The rocket system, the HIMARS rocket system from Lockheed Martin, $2.6 billion. And so far, that's the only thing from the U.S. Then we've got the aircraft, the early warning radar aircraft, that's built on a Bombardier executive jet frame, and Saab is involved in that, and that's a multi-billion-dollar, and it's in active negotiation, the final pricing on it. But that's going to be huge, because those planes are going to be built here in Canada, and one or two of the European countries put orders in for them in the last week or so. And again,
Yes, they have,
yeah, they're going to be built here. So we have that. And then we have the Arctic over-the-horizon radar system, and that's a deal that was signed with the Australians, and that's $2.5 billion for the direct technological acquisition contract, and over $6 billion in infrastructure installation and integration in the high north.
Mm-hmm.
And the last time I heard the U.S. mention its Golden Dome radar protection for North America, the price had jumped, and all of a sudden, out of the mouth of the leader of the United States came, they're going to pay $60 billion, $60 billion, I think it was.
60, yeah.
Why? And you know what? We don't need it anymore. So you build your little Golden Dome over your part of North America, and we'll look after the rest of it with our Australian friends. So, but the amount of money on the table there now, just in this one graphic, never mind the deal that was announced today,
Right.
is just totally amazing. And yes, it's a lot of money, but we have not done anything with our military other than buy Band-Aids for decades. And that's why now, in order to play catch up and get out, in front by a leg. That's why we're spending money the way we're spending. But in the long run, Eddie, it's going to have an economic spin-off all the way around for
Well,
people
yeah,
in
I mean,
Canada.
when you're
And
looking
it's
at
also going
tens
to
of
help us
billions of
develop
dollars.
our technology and put us in the forefront.
Well, we're looking at tens of billions of dollars over decades that are going to be invested in Canada for us to actually build and maintain all of these military systems. I mean, you're looking at different industries, defense, that's going to increase as a result of everything we're going to have to build, right? And then at the same time, you know, I'm not talking about putting a black spin on this, but it's a good problem to have. You're going to have all these people moving into Halifax who are already having a problem with housing. That the complaints that the housing price is going to go up. So, you know what? It's a demand and supply thing. Overall, it's going all these projects, Gary, are going to contribute to Canada, coast to coast, north to south, in some form or another. And you know what? This is exactly the kick in the arm that a country needs in terms of being able to surf through the global economic turmoil today by projects like this. And you know what? Congratulations to the Canadian government on this. Even congratulations to the opposition. In some form or another, they drive a lot of what's going on with the governing Liberal Party. There are a lot of good people in opposition that have a good head on their shoulders and are saying that we need to be able to defend our borders better, except for a few which I won't name right now. But yeah, I think this is how government is supposed to work. Official leader party in charge, the official opposition keep the Liberal Party and the government in check, while we continue to move forward by leaps and bounds, and we'll continue governing in this fashion. I'm actually very proud to be a Canadian today, Gary. This was a good thing for us.
Well, no question, Eddie. Defense spending is good for the economy, creates a lot of jobs, and here we are. We're developing into a country once again that will be at the forefront of technological development and weapon systems. You can't, to me, you can't go wrong, and there will be definitely a long-term return on investment, both financially and from a sovereignty standpoint, that we will be able to defend our sovereignty if the need arises. And we will have partners we can depend on in Europe, and we will have that ability to operate with them on a level playing field and still maintain our own decisions over what we are doing with the equipment that's being produced that we are using as well. So it bolsters research and development in the long run as well for Canada. You go back to the Arrow.
Yeah.
And we saw what happened with that when Canada rolled over and said to the U.S., "Okay, we'll stop," and they terminated the program and ditched all of the prototypes that they had. And where did a lot of those people end up?
NASA.
Exactly. And what did they end up working on? The space shuttle program.
Yeah.
And what did the shuttle remind you of every time you saw it? The Arrow.
Yeah.
So there you have it. So, we are moving from symbolic defense spending now toward long-term strategic capability, and our whole standing within the NATO group within Europe has shot up substantially. And I think overall, because of what we're doing and the amount we're spending now, and our size and our importance, both from a mineral standpoint, an oil standpoint, natural gas standpoint, and the North and the Northwest Passage, I think we are going to be taking more now of a leadership position in NATO and in working with our European allies that we haven't had in the past.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. We're a mid-sized power, and go back to the Davos speech earlier this year. The world is changing, and it's the mid-sized powers that are going to break loose of the old way of doing things. It's easier for us to do it in a whole lot of ways. And just because some of the larger powers in the world are just stuck in a time capsule.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So I really think it's going to pay long-term benefits for every Canadian over time.
Absolutely.
I really do. And our takeaway, Eddie?
What's your takeaway, Gary?
Well, it's this.
Yeah.
Canada isn't just buying submarines. It's redefining its role within NATO.
Yeah.
Up next, plans for a west-east pipeline. Finally ready to launch a website or move your site to a Canadian host? Check Web Hosting Canada, WHC, a Montreal company offering 3 times the speed of competitors. One-click installs for over 300 apps, including WordPress and Drupal, built-in security, servers located in Eastern and Western Canada, plus 24-hour assistance and competitive pricing. For more information, click on the affiliate link in the description below.
But I have also said many times that Alberta's aim is to double our oil production in the next 10 to 15 years and to diversify our export markets. And that means not only reaching global customers, but ensuring Canadians can benefit from our resources here at home. All Canadians deserve a stable, secure, and reliable energy supply. Alberta is ready to provide that stability and be the heart of a more energy sovereign and economically resilient Canada. After signing an agreement last year to work together with Alberta and Saskatchewan to build new pipelines through an economic corridor from Alberta to Ontario, the government of Ontario is here today to unveil a potential route for a new 3,300-kilometer oil pipeline from Hardisty, Alberta to Sarnia, Ontario. Known as the Northern Shield Energy Corridor, this project would pave the way for Alberta's barrier-free access to domestic refineries and markets in Eastern Canada.
The Northern Shield Energy Corridor will include a new pipeline built using Canadian steel by Canadian workers that will bring oil from Hardisty, Alberta, to new and expanded refineries in Sarnia, Ontario, including Sarnia's vital energy and shipping routes. The Northern Shield Energy Corridor would move on estimated 500,000 barrels of oil per day, with the ability to expand to 800,000 barrels per day, bringing new capacity to Ontario refineries and delivering critical redundancy for existing pipelines.
Well, ladies and gents, just a few years ago, new pipelines looked literally impossible. Now, Alberta and Ontario are talking about building one together. That says everything about how quickly Canada's priorities have shifted.
That they have, Eddie, that they have. And let's look at this. The proposed Northern Shield pipeline corridor is being framed as nation-building infrastructure. And supporters see energy security, economic growth, and reduced dependence on foreign markets. Critics, though, continue to question environmental impacts and long-term demand. So, why have we all of a sudden witnessed Alberta and Ontario aligned? Well, back last year during some of the First Ministers' meetings, and at that time there was, the whole thing between Alberta and British Columbia and the federal government over the pipeline that Smith wanted to build going to British Columbia to get oil going to Asia. And Ford was looking at some issues related to wanting to get more oil coming east from the west instead of relying on it coming from the east coast, normally bought offshore.
Right.
And at a time when they were talking about lowering interprovincial trade barriers, which some have been, there are still some that are outstanding, but Smith and Ford got together and they started talking about it. And of course, you've got Sarnia, which has refineries, and they're looking for more oil. And Ford was talking on this clip about the fact that expanding and new refineries in Sarnia. So they need a secure supply. And the secure supply, obviously, is coming from the west. So what does that do? That also eases some of the talk about Alberta and the fact that Ontario and East weren't getting any Western oil. They were, buying it offshore. So you've got that side of it. It's energy security versus environmental politics. And you're going to get the uproar over the environmental side of things, but that's just normal. That's part of the wear and tear for the process overall. But the fact of the matter is, Alberta has oil, and there was an article I saw the other day where the number of requests for new permits to drill wells in Alberta has increased. Yeah. I forget what, I can't remember the percentage now, but since 2014, it's up significantly, the numbers of permit applications. So there is a real desire and need for that oil. They're not punching holes into the ground just for the fun of it. They obviously feel that the reserve is there, and we're sitting on, what is it, the fourth largest reserve in the world? And there's still a demand, despite what the environmentalists will tell you. There is a demand, and there will continue to be a demand for oil a lot longer than what some of the environmentalists are thinking will be the actual case. Because again, as I have said on so many occasions, just about everything we touch in our daily lives is related somehow to a petroleum-based
byproduct.
Yeah, exactly. So you have that side of it. And also, what does it mean? Well, the east-west infrastructure will help to boost national unity throughout all of this. God knows we need that, for sure. And right now, you've got about 20% of the population of Alberta still pushing and with the dream of Alberta becoming a separate country. And then over here in our own province, we're going to be going through the same thing, and it's going to be getting heavier or stronger and pushed at us more so probably beginning more around the middle of next month, going into October when we go to the polls. So the fact that we can, and here's the other key thing. The oil coming from Alberta to the refineries in Sarnia now, the pipeline that they are using, and this is key to sovereignty, the pipeline they are using dips down somewhere in Manitoba, in through the States, and then back to Ontario. So, in effect, we lose control for a portion of that, and could become a choke point and choke off the refineries in Sarnia, just like that, if the U.S. decided to do so. At least a Canadian route would give us
Secure.
sovereign control. However, Premier Wab Kinew is throwing cold water on the idea as it passes through Manitoba. And I believe I saw something the other day where part of the problem is the route skirts the shoreline of Winnipeg's water supply. So I can see that that might be a concern for sure, no question.
Mm-hmm.
However, I can't see Wab Kinew just blocking the idea altogether. If that's a concern, then everybody sit down around a
And
table
address it.
and work with it. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Wab Kinew's, you know what? He has every right to raise his hand and say, hang on a second, we got a couple of things we need to talk about here first. He didn't say no, but he says, these are the issues that we see right now. He's a very progressive, extremely intelligent young man, all right? He knows what's good for his province of Manitoba. He knows what's good for all of his citizens. It doesn't matter where they come from. And he understands the importance of this to Canada. And good for him for sticking his hand up. And by the same token, I know he's going to be part of the solution building in terms of accommodating his and his constituents' concern with this pipeline going across Manitoba's territory. I am not concerned about that. This is what I keep on saying, Gary. Some good opposition to good ideas gives you a better solution, right? Whether it's in government, whether it's we're talking about military spending, developing our defense strategies, no matter what. In this particular case, we're speaking about oil, securing our oil in the country. You need opposition to come up with a better solution, and I think this opposition from Manitoba is exactly that, and they will find that. That's the first observation, and I guess the second quick observation I can make, Gary, to what you said earlier on. The separatists in Alberta, vying to come to the country. One of the biggest grievances is Canada in the past, both you and I agreed, had screwed Alberta over in terms of oil policy. We've seen that happen for decades. Okay, here we have an administration. Here we have a government that is promoting Canadian resources, and this one happens to be oil, bending over backwards to A, correct previous mistakes, B, to be able to jump ahead in leaps and bounds. So I kind of look at this and say, all right, here's one of the major grievances that Alberta separatists have had, is being able to have bigger diversity and control over their oil and getting it to market. Well, they cannot come out and argue against this joint proposal and solution between Ford of Ontario and Smith of Alberta in addressing that. And then last week we had the discussion between Alberta and getting oil out to British Columbia. So, that entire point of argument for the Alberta separatists, more and more is starting to sound like a moot point when it comes to oil, because they are looking at getting that solution driven as quickly as possible. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in on that one there.
Sure. And we had a comment and asking about they thought that the Canadian federal government had the investment in the oil extraction in Alberta. The heavy oil out of Fort McMurray, there are a number of companies involved in that. And from what I understand, the new permits for the new wells, exploratory wells, again, are coming from petroleum companies. I think you're going back to the days of the father of our last
Trudeau
Prime
Senior.
Minister, Trudeau Senior, Pierre, when he nationalized oil production and set up a company then known as Petro-Canada, and set up there a complete line of gas stations across the country. It was just a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually that was righted, and Petro-Canada was sold off to the private side of things. But no, there are some major players in the oil sands in northern Alberta and elsewhere within Alberta as far as oil extraction is concerned. So hopefully that'll clear that up for you. And yeah, and here's a good point as well. Like, it's irritating that the pipeline won't continue to the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
Why won't
Absolutely.
it continue to the East Coast? Well, you and I, Eddie, are living in the
We're living in
roadblock.
it.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
the East Coast, unfortunately. And it burns my butt, to put it bluntly, that here we are, province that gets the largest share of equalization payments, a province that has the second highest population in the country, next to Ontario, and we're getting the largest share of equalization payments, a province that's rich in hydro generation capacity. There are, lumber, farming, and we do sit on top of, from what I understand, a number of natural gas.
LNGs. Yeah.
Yeah. So fields, and they have so far over the years refused to develop those. So what do you do?
Right.
What do you do?
Well, you know what? Quite frankly, if I'm someone that likes pain, Ottawa will look at Quebec and say, "Look, we are building this pipeline to the east. Otherwise, there's going to be some discussion on the equalization payments. You want to see a province squirm?
Yeah, I'd
Seriously, you
love to
want to
see
see a
that.
province squirm? Oh my God! You want to see a province squirm? Cut back on the equalization payments and see what happens."
And here's the thing, Eddie, like, you cut back on the equalization payments. When you look at the amount of money they're receiving in these equalization payments, and you look at our tax regime in this province,
Yep.
we should be just rolling in the money. But
Right.
yet our healthcare system is, in a state of decline,
Hmm.
and there's just a whole host of things that all goes back to provincial governments, current and previous, plus a couple of
Mismanagement.
referendums thrown in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes no sense. And I'll tell you, if they lost those equalization payments, or a good chunk of them, the governments, that the parties in this province would be in serious trouble, because I don't think any of them would be able to run the province and pull it out of the economic decline that we would be in as a result of that lost money.
Well, ironically, in our show last week, Gary, the separatist movement here in Quebec, and I don't want to go too deeply into that now. It's another segment. But the separatist movement in here in Quebec are basically saying, "Oh, we can do it on our own without Canada's equalization payments." Well, if that's the statement that's being made by opposition here, or even the existing government, well, to me, that's a cue for Ottawa to say, "Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much for that. Let me take advantage of this, and we're running the pipeline over to New Brunswick, and if not, we're just going to cut it down to 25%. How does that sound?" I don't know, Gary. I mean, you and I both negotiated contracts before. It's an easy one for me to put on the table and say, "Okay, here you go." It's like,
Yep.
oh, that just, and you know what? Deborah's absolutely right. There should have been a pipeline out there years ago.
Well,
That would
Energy
have exposed
East.
us. That would have exposed us to markets in Europe who are dying for petroleum product, right?
Mm-hmm. Anyway, yes, that's a whole other. That could be a whole show. Anyway,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
let's wrap it up with the fact that infrastructure decisions made today are going to shape Canada's economy for decades, and that's
Hmm.
we really have to get our heads around that fact.
Yeah.
All levels of government have to get their heads around that fact. And right now, we're on the cusp. Yes, it's tough. So, the economic situation around the world is tough right now. A lot of it thanks, in a large part, to someone we thought was an ally who proved no, that's not the case. So everyone suffers. But in the long run, this country right now, just with the defense spending, never mind anything else, but we are on the cusp of greatness. And we
Hmm.
have to embrace it and roll with it. So, what's our takeaway?
Gary, well said. Well, our takeaway: Canada's energy debate is no longer simply about oil, it's about resilience. Up next, the FIFA World Cup mess. We hope you're enjoying tonight's stream. We started out in this adventure having conversations and a coffee. Speaking of coffee, if you'd like to support our efforts, you can buy us a coffee. Simply scan the code on the screen or click the link in the description below. Gary and I thank you for your support.
Well, Eddie, on the field, it was supposed to be all about football.
Soccer. Instead, the biggest headlines have become officiating, politics, and the ever present money, Gary.
So let's start with the red card politics, Eddie. And I know, I know this is a sore point for you. So take it away.
Oh, Gary, where do I start? Where do I start? Well, first of all, okay, the tournament itself. I think this World Cup tournament has been absolutely fantastic, full of surprises, giants falling, the little guy winning games they shouldn't have won. It's really been a great World Cup, and you know what? No better or no worse than any other World Cup. It's got its fantastic moments in sport, and then you always have the officiating moments that may taint a game or two, even if it's especially when it gets down to the crunch time. But here's the whole thing, Gary. In recent memory of World Cup competition, there really hasn't been any sort of political elements that are dictating the success or the reputation of the World Cup games. And Gary, this actually did happen. As our viewers probably know, and yourself, we've heard it nonstop through mainstream media and social media. It's this whole thing about uh, the red card gate, the red card controversy. And you know what? And this is all surrounding the United States football team and Belgium's football team in terms of the last game they played. Prior to that game, just for our viewers, we had a key player in the United States team get hit with a red card. And when it comes to FIFA football rules, any player that gets a red card is automatically suspended for the next game. So the player involved with this, he wasn't supposed to play the All Star from the United States. Nobody seemed to complain about it. The United States Soccer Federation did not forward a complaint to FIFA about this particular ruling, so they seem to be okay with it. Everybody seemed to be okay with it because it's part of soccer, except he who shall not be named right now decided to place a phone call because, in his view, he didn't think there was a penalty that justified a red card. So he called up Giancarlo Infantino and said, well, you know what, I don't like the call and whatever else and so on and so forth. Can you look into it? Lo and behold, Gary, lo and behold, ladies and gentlemen, FIFA overturned the decision of the red card and allowed the American player to play his next match against Belgium. Let me correct that statement. FIFA came back and said that it did not overturn the red card ruling. They simply decided to put it on probation, that if he ever gets another yellow card or red card, he will be suspended. So they suspended a rule to enforce the rule, but at a later time. So you can imagine the outcry around the world, especially soccer-loving nations, of this particular decision by FIFA. And right off the bat, you know, as soon as you get he who shall not be named getting involved with anything, it turns to crap. So a beautiful game, a beautiful tournament, all of a sudden, as opposed to just having soccer controversy, now we have the leader of a country getting involved with the game and potentially affecting the outcome. Okay? And at the end of the day, this poor player, Florian Balogun of the United States, all of a sudden gets reinstated. And the entire world is looking at the United States now, not looking at them or rooting for them as another soccer nation, right? You know, just speaking metaphorically, it was a 50-50 thing. 50% of the world was rooting for Belgium, 50% of the world was rooting for the United States. Let's just use that as an example. Just with one phone call and one political involvement by you-know-who, and then FIFA, the corrupt FIFA president, saying, sure, no problem, allowing that player to play, all of a sudden, planet Earth, 99.9% of soccer fans in planet Earth were rooting for Belgium, and a fraction was rooting for the United States. And who loses in this? Soccer. Who loses in this? The United States soccer team. So if the United States won the game, the entire planet is saying there was a fix in here. Not fair. This player should not have played. Corruption. If the United States lost, 99.99% of the world say good for them. So the poor players, the competitors of the United States, their entire experience and their country's experience got soiled because he who shall not be named decided at the spur of the moment he's going to become a soccer commentator, a soccer analyst, and a soccer fan. Probably doesn't know the first thing about soccer, but the individual got involved. So Gary, look, at the end of the day, Brussels beat the United States 4-1, and quite handily. I mean, we're talking about a powerhouse here, giving the United States a spanking. I personally think the United States would have performed a lot better, even without their superstar. If he was suspended, if he stayed suspended for that one game, I think the U.S. players would have done a hell of a lot more without this overlying pressure and catastrophic decision over their heads rendered by you-know-who or pushed by you-know-who. So I really feel bad for the United States Football Association on this. And you know what? They got caught in the middle. They have no say in this. And that's just sad for the sport. And Gary, what's going to happen with the American Olympics in 2 years? Somebody does not throw a ball properly. The shot put goes in the wrong direction. Somebody's, I don't know, bathing suit fell off while they swam. They're going to reverse a decision. And, oh, he should have won the gold medal. That politically this is going to change the outcome of a competition. What about other soccer teams in the World Cup today that had players suspended over a red card? What are you going to do for them now? Give them a gimme? What's going to happen for future suspensions? So this sent a real ugly precedent for the tournament because someone couldn't keep his mouth shut. So as a soccer fan, Gary, I'm still continuing to be excited for the World Cup. We're down to the quarterfinals, eight teams left, and I'm just very sad for the United States of America and continuously being embarrassed on the world stage. You've probably seen videos of the Belgian players making a mockery of you know who by dancing his YMCA strut on the field in full view of billions of people watching the game, and then thereafter on YouTube feeds of them celebrating to YMCA and doing the you know who
Yeah.
strut in full view of the world. Just another global embarrassment on the world stage for the United States, and I really feel bad for the soccer players who really tried their darndest to host the games properly.
But you know what? I know where you're coming from as far as feeling bad, but I don't. You know that?
Hmm.
It's their circus, their ape.
Yeah.
And they, the majority of people, somewhere along the way, voted this individual and his party in, and you've got what you've got. So, like I say, your circus, your ape, not my problem. I don't feel the least bit any kind of remorse or anything, empathy, nothing. You've got what you've got, and you're going to have to live with it for at least another 2 years. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? There was a post-game interview with the Belgian coach, and you actually saw on television where um, Florian Balogun, who was the U.S. player implicated in this particular fiasco, ran across the field and actually went to speak to the Belgian coach. And when the Belgian coach was asked, "What did he come up to say to you?" The Belgian coach said he came up to me and apologized, saying it wasn't his fault. And you can see that the Belgian coach put his hand on his shoulder, and the coach was asked, "Well, what did you tell him?" "I told him this was not your fault. Be proud of what you accomplished." Now, if that isn't the pinnacle of sportsmanship during a very, very difficult time, where you
True.
have the coach of the opposition team consoling the player implicated in this, who not only lost the game and the United States was eliminated from further competition, but knowing that this entire fiasco was centered around him just playing soccer. This was not his doing, is not his decision. It just, you know what, out of every bad situation, you always have humanity come out on top. And I thought that moment there between said player and the opposition coach basically gives you faith in humanity. As far as that's how I felt. Like, this is the way it's supposed to be done.
Now, following along on this whole thing, a number of the, as they call them in Europe, the football associations over there
Hmm.
have now filed complaints about some of the other red cards that have been handed out during the tournament this year, and also about the refereeing. Apparently, the refereeing was inconsistent, shall we say.
Yeah.
So, like, this has just opened up a whole can of worms, and FIFA's going to come out of this. Like, this president of FIFA, he was one step away from kissing the ass of the president of the United States from the get-go, to put it bluntly.
Hmm. It's already been
Anyway.
kissed, Gary. It's already
Yeah.
been kissed.
So, when you look at it from that perspective, Eddie, how can this guy have any kind of credibility as president of that organization? And then coming in the first year of a new peace award. Why would a soccer / football, as it's called over there, organization hand out a peace award? What the hell does that have to do with soccer?
Exactly.
Absolutely nothing. Nothing. But this guy was so trying to, and it just like, the whole thing, every time you saw the two of them together, to me it looked really slimy, just to put it bluntly, really
Yeah.
slimy. And
Yeah, it's that man's got to be ousted. Look, I mean, you know, besides corruption, all of a sudden promoting unfair play, I think that should just push all the
and
soccer federations around the world to get this guy gone, get him
and
out of there, and then investigate
right.
him.
And I saw a clip this morning. I just happened upon it, going back to, I guess probably when they were doing some of the preamble prior to the World Cup actually starting, and he pulls out a little package of cards and showing the president, this is yellow and this is a warning and this is red and that means you're out.
Hmm.
And then I saw the president the other day saying, you know, red card. I didn't know what that meant, and somebody told me. And like the way it just went on. Anyway, I didn't watch it for more than about 2 minutes because I couldn't take it. Just couldn't take it. So
I don't blame you.
that's all of that. And apparently, aside from the refereeing and some of this other foolishness, the games overall have been pretty good. I
Yeah.
didn't. I caught a couple of minutes here and there of some games. I'm not really a big fan. So, and plus, they're being played when I was doing other things too. So, I didn't really see a lot of them. But from what I, have been reading, apparently there were some really good matches throughout.
Yeah,
So,
Gary. Yeah, most of the matches have been very, very exciting. You'll have teams up 2-0 and then end up tying the other team ends up tying the game, goes to a shootout and kick out. It's been a really good tournament. It's the few games were a little boring, but there has been exciting soccer. And again, this whole thing blemishes the entire tournament, and it's been wonderful to watch the games. I've been watching quite a few of them. My wife is not in particular a great sports fan, but she's been watching the games, and lo and behold, she's at the edge of her seat watching the games and actually observing some of the mistakes that are happening on the field in terms of officiating. And you know what, Gary? I firmly believe that the toughest job in sports is being a referee in soccer. Because you've got billions of people, especially the World Cup and the European Cup tournaments, billions of people watching the games, and the referee's every move is scrutinized in high definition, super slow-mo, frame by frame review of whether a call is good or not. Which, you know what, I think they do a fantastic job. They will make mistakes. But when you're
sure, they're
talking about
human.
a call going left and either to the left or to the right for a split hair microsecond being caught on slow motion replay analyzed by three replay officials, and to say no, the referee made a mistake, but you can't do anything about it because something happened. Well, you know what? It's very easy to point at the referees. These are human beings doing the best job they possibly can in most difficult of circumstances in the digital age. I mean, Gary, they've got a microchip in the ball to identify whether it passed over some guy's parted hairline that would define it was an offside or not. I mean, the technology is absolutely crazy. And I think this technology is getting in the way of the game and the credibility of the capability of the referees. They are all very, very capable referees. And you know what? When you show a replay up on the screen with 95,000 screaming fans watching that particular call potentially being close or wrong, well, that sets the tone for the rest of the game for the referee. So poor guys, hats off to them. People might say it's a fix and this, that, and the other thing. I don't believe in that crap. These guys are on the spot with billions of people watching. High pressure on these fellows, and I think they're doing a great job considering the circumstances. And you know what? I mean, you're looking at hockey. I mean, nowadays you have instant replays, and the coaches can object to a call twice a game, if I'm not mistaken, with consequences if you object for no reason at all. They've got to come up with some other system to better protect the referees, as far as I'm concerned, and maybe enhance the credibility of the game itself. But Gary, you know what? If you're now that I know you're finished off with a lot of things you're working on, I think it behooves you to watch a few of these games, because quite a few of them have been quite exciting. One yesterday was the game with Argentina and Egypt. Egypt was up 2-0 on world champions Argentina. Argentina scores two quick ones towards the end of the game, and went on to win. It was incredible. What a soccer game! They won 3-2, believe it or not. It was absolutely amazing to watch. So if you can catch a game or two, and you and I will catch a game or two, I think you'll enjoy the experience. And you know what? I know we haven't talked about it yet, but these World Cups are not cheap.
No, no.
Yeah.
And I brought up some notes to roll into that, because Canadian host cities, Toronto and Vancouver, are now beginning to assess whether the World Cup will deliver the promised economic benefits. Any bets? Well,
How does it look?
it's looking like we thought it would look. Like any good party host, Toronto and Vancouver are probably not coming out ahead financially. So, just to give you an idea, debit and credit card spending at restaurants and bars rose by just 3% in Toronto during the first 2 weeks of the World Cup, compared to the same period last year. No World Cup.
That's it.
And that's according to data from payment processing company Moneris. Now, put that in perspective to this. Are you ready? Bar and restaurant spending rose by 12% in Toronto during Taylor Swift's 2024 Eras Tour performances.
Wow.
12%.
We're looking at 6 or 7 games in Toronto spread out over 3 weeks. That's all they generated, just 3%. And Taylor Swift's, 3-day concert, 2-day concert?
12.
Wow, that's incredible.
And that's not even taking into account the number of empty hotel rooms.
Yeah.
Because as you got closer to the first kickoff, it was hotels were reporting people canceling, or rooms that were available that had not been booked still available. And of course, the prices were crazy, and
Yeah.
so they had to start slashing the prices somewhat. But it didn't really, especially apparently in the U.S. in particular, it did not produce the number of people coming in. Well, they were turning people away at the border, for God's sakes.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. So,
Uh,
what the hell do you expect? And then they're wondering why they're getting such a bad rap. So, let's look at this a little bit more. Spending by international visitors was up 34% from last year, suggesting whatever tourism boost the city saw was offset by locals and domestic tourists opting against braving what many expected to be throngs of footy fans.
uh-huh.
So, when all is said and done, the parliamentary budget officer estimated that we would spend over $1 billion to co-host the World Cup in Toronto and Vancouver, roughly around $82 million a game. $82 million a game, Eddie. A good chunk of that coming from you and me.
Mm-hmm.
And tournament boosters justified that cost, in part by pointing to forecasts, some sponsored by FIFA, by the way,
Of course.
of supercharged economic activity that now seems overly, really optimistic.
Mm-hmm. Right. Rose-colored glasses.
And some politicians just fell into that big bowl of syrup and got stuck like you would not believe. So, large international sporting events like the World Cup and the Olympics are always pitched, almost anyway, always pitched as paying for themselves. But
Right.
that almost never turns out to be the case. So, and we know that in Montreal.
God, yes.
So, and we're still paying for one piece of Olympic infrastructure.
Yeah.
Putting a new roof on it costing in today's dollars what it cost to construct the building in the first place with
For a
the
stadium
roof
that
that
hasn't
never
been
worked.
for a stadium that hasn't been used in 25 years.
Now, one
Oh,
recent paper that looked at every Olympic Games since 2000 found that they have nearly always been money losers with costs running well over budget and promised economic gains never materializing. So, you don't host the World Cup to make money. You do it for the vibes. Well, those are pretty expensive vibes. And maybe give your city's brand a bit more juice. Well, that's pretty damned expensive juice. $82 million a game. So,
let's look at the future here, Gary. So what happens with FIFA tournaments, World Cup tournaments? What happens with the Olympics? Does this mean that at some point it's going to dry up where they're not going to be held anymore because host cities realize that they can't afford it? Like what the hell happens? It's sad. I'm a sports fan. I love the Olympics and the World Cup. But when you sit back and listen to what you just conveyed, you kind of say to yourself, why the hell are we shooting ourselves in the foot when our hospitals are decaying or our infrastructure is decaying? And where's this money going? Why is this money going there? I think at some point people are going to start asking those questions, don't you think?
oh, they have to. They
Yeah.
really have to. Take the rose colored glasses off because really, the only people who end up making money on these, like FIFA is going to walk away with money in its pocket.
A hoard of money. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got that. And then, the Olympics. Who walks away with money in their pocket? The Olympic Committee or organizing
The
committee
IOC.
yeah,
The
that's it.
IOC
Thank you.
and their sponsors. Yeah.
Yeah, the International Olympic Committee, is it? So
Yeah.
they, everything is geared and funneled toward those organizations. The money, anyway. And everything else is like, oh, it's going to be great for you and blah, 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 blah. And even if you have to spend money on a new stadium, you're going to get. No, you're not. You're stuck with a facility at the end of it that's going to cost you money for maintenance in the long run, and you'll never really be able to charge what you need to charge to offset the costs of maintaining it. Because you'll have nobody showing up if you do
Well,
to to take advantage of it, like a swimming pool or whatever.
yeah. Well, yeah, right at the beginning of the segment, they kind of introduced it, and you were saying about promoting unity, and these sports do actually promote national unity. You can't deny that and get away from that. You look at just our Canadian team and how far they advanced this year, and it did bring Canadians together coast to coast, just like our Stanley Cup championships. When we have a Canadian team involved, it gets people united and citizens united. That doesn't matter what stripe of politics you follow. Um, is there a price to that? Is there an acceptable price to that? Right? I was quite proud of our Canadian team and proud to watch the game and support them as best I can. Now that's from a sports fan mentality, but how much is too much money? Gary, as a sports fan, I mean, I had applied to FIFA lots, drawing lots to be able to get my hands on inexpensive tickets. I never once got selected to, as a Canadian citizen, to have the option of buying tickets to go see a game in Toronto or in Vancouver. I know someone. We just met someone in the pool in our building. She had the privilege in Toronto to go watch a soccer match. It wasn't a Canadian soccer match, but I forget what teams. Gary, nosebleed section, $3,000 for 2 tickets. $3,000. And the game in Toronto that Canada lost against Morocco. On the resale sites, these things were being sold $10,000 a ticket. You and I are not going to go. I mean, obviously somebody's going to pay for it. $10,000 a ticket. And in some cases, the seats weren't even sold, where the cities had an allocation of tickets for themselves in Toronto and Vancouver, as opposed to selling them to people like you and I. They sold them to the corporate world for exorbitant amounts to be able to recover some cash. I saw this in an article as well.
Toronto was doing that.
How much money is too much money to promote national unity? I mean, at some point, if we keep up this way, we're not going to have any sports because nobody can afford it. Or unless the venues are already built, you can't afford to host them anymore.
That's where it's heading, Eddie. They're now starting to choke off the goose that laid the golden egg, and you've got it's a form of corporate greed that has filtered into a lot of these major sporting organizations, whether it's the NHL or the NFL, you name it. It's all now about the money and not necessarily about the product. And how much more can we squeeze out of each fan? That's what it's about. And if we can't get them to the game, how much more can we squeeze out of them for their subscription to TSN or Sportsnet?
Yes, true.
That's what it's all about.
It's sad. It really is sad because it's.
How many of these organizations, like the Canadian Soccer Organization, how much money are they going to realize, like some kind of a not a donation, but some kind of a contribution from FIFA to the soccer organization, hopefully to go and help promote soccer with kids and getting
grassroots.
Various house leagues organized and everything. Like, how much are they getting? I haven't heard anything about that at all. If they're getting anything.
That usually comes from the Canadian government.
But why? Why shouldn't we get a chunk of the ticket sales and any other broadcast rights and everything?
You
as
hit it
the
off the head,
host,
Gary. It's the 5-letter
why
word.
shouldn't we
Greed.
get a percentage of that to help offset our costs?
Greed at the highest levels.
So we're at a point in these competitions and like FIFA and World Cup hockey and everything. We're at a point, first of all, where the ticket prices are getting crazy. Accessing TV or live streaming is getting crazy, the cost of that. And then the cost of the host city and extra policing, security.
Right.
Look, we had fighter jets in the air over the two stadiums during games because there was no fly zone. And all of the extra security from that perspective, and CSIS and everybody else, probably we had the tightest hook on immigration in this country in years.
Yeah.
And maybe we should be carrying some of that over to the day-to-day role of immigration. But that's a whole other story that we're going to be getting to at some point soon, I hope. But like it to me, as a taxpayer, I'm sitting here and thinking, really? Seriously? And this smooth-talking used car salesman, the president of FIFA, comes in.
Right.
And he had, like Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow just practically eating out of the palm of his hand. I'm not sure about how he was greeted in Vancouver, but I'm sure they welcomed him with open arms, obviously. But it's going to come crashing down. It has to.
Yeah.
They're
Well, you know what?
choking off the average person.
Well, some time ago, when we talked about this in preparation for the World Cup, we had a little bit of a debate back and forth in terms of being happy that Montreal actually turned down the tournament. As a sports fan, I was like,
Right.
it's kind of sad. It would have been great to put Montreal back on the map internationally, but listening to what you had to say about everything that goes into hosting one of these things, A, we haven't got a stadium. B, yes, we have a fantastic soccer stadium with the Club de Montréal, Club de Soccer Montréal. Beautiful Saputo Stadium. Joey Saputo was
Yes.
not going to spend his own money in upgrading that. Somebody else was going to have to pay for that. You and me, amongst Quebec taxpayers, having to pay for that. Then you're talking about the infrastructure, the security, and blah 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 blah. Yeah, you know what? I don't think the city of Montreal wouldn't be able to host an event of that magnitude without a significant amount of money poured into it. And look, we talked about the Quebec government and the rampant mismanagement that happens with a lot of our projects here. We probably would have cost, out of the three host cities, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, and I hate being a naysayer about this, I think we probably would have been the most expensive city out of the three in terms of the cost associated with hosting such an event at the end of the day. So I'm sad as a sports fan I wasn't able to participate in a lot of the intercity activities that surround an event like the World Cup. But at the end of the day, I'm not particularly proud of living in a province that is the highest tax state in all of North and South America, and I didn't want that to go any higher. So I go back to what you had said, Gary. I now agree with you. It was a good thing that we turned down the offer.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And with that, Eddie, how do you wrap it up?
That's a hard one, Gary. Folks, when people question the referee, they eventually question the entire tournament.
That they do, Eddie, that they do. And it's so true. Anyhow, that's going to wrap it up for episode 91 tonight. Wasn't really about submarines or pipelines or soccer. It was about pressure. Canada is entering an era where defense, energy, and even international sports are increasingly shaped by powerful outside forces. Now, the challenge isn't avoiding that pressure, it's deciding who gets to influence Canada's future and who doesn't. We leave you with a final question tonight. Where do you think Canada should be drawing firmer lines? Defense, energy, or international organizations? Let us know in the comments below.
And remember to like, share, subscribe, or follow. We do appreciate your support. I'm Eddie Kalak. Have a safe week and good night.
And I'm Gary MacDonald. Night Talk Canada returns in 7 days. Good night.